He thought he could betray me and get away with it. In return, I gave him the destruction he deserved. Welcome to /Regrets. Like and subscribe for more stories. Enjoy! I never imagined betrayal could hit like that. Not the quiet kind. Not the subtle kind where doubts grow slowly in the background, but the brutal kind that rips the floor out from under you in one violent motion. One single slip of my thumb on his phone, one accidental tap, and suddenly my entire life collapsed in seconds. I had been with Ryan for almost 8 years. 8 years of driving him everywhere because of his deteriorating vision. 8 years of paying tuition, supporting him emotionally, financially, physically, in every way. I loved him like I never thought I could love another man. I believed he was my future. We were engaged, planning a wedding, planning a life. But with one screen, one set of filthy messages, I found out he wasn't just cheating. He was betraying me on levels that were almost impossible to count. When he confessed that weekend, it felt like he had stabbed me over and over again. First Johnny, the ex, then Tyler, his cousin, then Tomas, the sex offender, and finally Frankie, the grinder fling that had been going on for nearly 2 years. For men, maybe more. Each confession was like a hammer to my chest, and the more he admitted, the less air there was in the room. But as the tears dried and the screaming turned into silence, something else began to take shape inside me. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't resignation. It was rage, but not the kind that burns out. This was nuclear rage, the kind that fuels strategy, the kind that wants justice, not closure. At first, I didn't even think about revenge. I thought about survival. I thought about how to make sure I was safe, that I wasn't exposed to STIs, that I wasn't left financially ruined. But then I started putting the pieces together. I had the receipts. I had the call logs. I had access to his cloud accounts, his messages, his dirty secrets. He had built his life on my shoulders. And now that I knew the truth, those shoulders weren't going to hold him up anymore. He was going to crumble, and I was going to make sure every single accomplice fell with him. The first move was simple: money. I had just sent his last tuition check to the credential program, but I called the bank and blocked it. He was months away from becoming a certified teacher, something I had sacrificed so much to help him achieve. That dream? Gone in one phone call. But I didn't stop there. I remembered the mandated reporter paperwork, the moral turpitude clause. I knew that his actions weren't just personal, they were professional suicide. And I was holding the matches. But Johnny, his ex, was first on my list of secondary targets. I didn't go halfway. I took screenshots of every conversation, every filthy line, every plan to meet behind my back. And I sent them directly to Johnny's fiancée. No anonymous message, no tip from a stranger. I made sure she knew it came from me. She deserved to see the truth with her own eyes, deserved the chance to walk away before tying herself to a cheater. When she dumped him and his family turned their backs, I knew the first domino had fallen. Tyler, the cousin, was next. That one I almost couldn't believe when Ryan confessed. Incest in my own home while I was working to support us. The disgust boiled in me, and I knew the family needed to know. I logged into Ryan's Facebook and dropped the truth like a bomb. I didn't even have to push. The wildfire spread itself. Within hours, the entire family knew he had slept with Tyler. Relatives called, texted, demanded answers. Tyler panicked, begged for silence, but I laughed in his face. He was engaged. He had done this in my home. He had betrayed not just me, but his own bloodline. Let him burn. Then there was Tomas, the predator. I had always told Ryan to stay away from him. Everyone in my family knew Tomas was trouble. He was a registered sex offender, a man convicted of assaulting a teenager. And Ryan chose him. When I realized some of their encounters had taken place in the church parking lot across from our condo, I saw my chance. I walked over, talked to the secretary, and asked about security footage. By some miracle, the system kept 2 years of archives, and both encounters were still there. They handed me the files without hesitation when I explained what Tomas had done and who he was. The police report I filed was ironclad. Within weeks, Tomas was back behind bars. When I got that confirmation call, I smiled for the first time since discovering the betrayal. Frankie was the cockiest of them all. He thought he was clever, untouchable. He laughed when I confronted him. laughed. But he didn't know who he was dealing with. I dug into him. I found his job, his debts, his security clearance. I connected the dots for collection agencies who had been searching for him for years. I gave them his exact employer and location. Then I sent the police report of his misdemeanor indecent exposure straight to his HR department. Within weeks, his clearance was revoked, his job gone, his paychecks garnished. The man who thought he was above consequences was suddenly drowning in them. Each move felt like a release. Each life ruined felt like a piece of balance being restored. But the crown jewel was Ryan himself. I didn't just break off the engagement. I dismantled him. I forced him to confess to his family in front of me. I locked him out of his accounts, his phone service, his financial support. And then, when I was sure he thought he could recover, I dropped the bomb. I sent the police reports, the security footage, the evidence of moral corruption straight to the Commission on Teacher Credentials. His teaching career, the one I had sacrificed for, the one I had built for him brick by brick, evaporated overnight. But the revenge didn't end with them. Word spread. Our community wasn't that big. Soon, people who had admired Ryan for his perseverance, for overcoming his disability, started whispering. Parents at the school where he student taught heard rumors. His name became mud. He wasn't just unemployed, he was radioactive. Meanwhile, I was left in that condo. At first, I thought victory would heal me, that watching them all fall would fill the emptiness he left behind. But nights were still long. The walls still echoed with memories of him laughing, smiling, loving me while planning betrayals behind my back. The condo was poisoned, haunted. I couldn't breathe there anymore, so I sold it, made a profit, packed my bags, and left the entire chapter behind. 9 months after the discovery, I was gone. A new life in the Pacific Northwest, far away from the wreckage. I thought maybe I could finally rest. But even then, the consequences followed. I found out later that Johnny, the ex-fiancé cheater, had spiraled after his engagement collapsed. He took his own life months after I moved. That truth sat heavy on me. I hadn't meant for anyone to die. But then again, I hadn't put Johnny in my bed either. Ryan had. The blood wasn't on my hands, it was on his. Still, it haunted me. I sought therapy. For a year and a half, I tried traditional sessions, but nothing pulled me out of the bitterness, the rage, the PTSD. Then I tried ketamine infusion therapy, and it was like the storm finally broke. For the first time, I could breathe without anger. For the first time, I could see a future without bitterness. Slowly, I learned to trust again. Slowly, I let myself love again. I thought it was over after I left. I thought burning his world down to ashes, cutting ties, moving across the country, and building a new life meant the story was finished. But revenge doesn't end neatly. It lingers like smoke, curling through cracks, finding new places to stain. I had moved on, I was married again, I was healthier, stronger, a completely different person. But one thing about nuclear fallout is that it doesn't just disappear. Poisons the soil for years, sometimes decades. And Ryan's fallout was far from finished. The first time I heard about him again was almost 2 years after I left. A mutual acquaintance messaged me out of nowhere. Someone I hadn't spoken to in ages. They opened with, "You won't believe what happened to Ryan." My stomach turned instantly. Even though I was in a better place, the name still triggered me like a gunshot. I almost ignored the message. But curiosity won. I opened it, and the words hit me harder than expected. Ryan was homeless. Not couch surfing, not struggling. Actually homeless, living out of a tent near the riverbank in our old city. Apparently, after I pulled the plug on his teaching career, he spiraled fast. He tried working odd jobs, retail, warehouse work, tutoring. But every time, someone who knew someone whispered the truth. Employers got cold feet. Parents refused to let him around their kids. His disability didn't help. Without me driving him, without me organizing his meds, his bills, his paperwork, his whole structure collapsed. He lost the condo. His family, disgusted by the incest reveal with Tyler, refused to take him in. And eventually, he had nothing left. He was that man you see from your car window, pushing a cart full of plastic bags, and wonder what tragedy put him there. At first, I felt a stab of guilt. The therapist in me, the old me, wanted to say maybe I went too far. Maybe ruining his career and reputation was enough, and I didn't need to scorch the earth. But that voice didn't last long. Because the second thing that acquaintance told me was that Ryan wasn't sorry. Not at all. He wasn't living in shame or reflection. He was telling anyone who would listen that I had ruined him. That I was abusive, controlling, manipulative. That I fabricated the cheating to destroy him. He twisted the story, painted himself as the victim, tried to salvage scraps of pity from strangers. And hearing that erased any sympathy I might have had. Then came the bombshell. Tyler, the cousin he slept with, had gotten married after all. To the fiancée who almost left him. Somehow he'd managed to patch it up. Convince her that what happened was a one-time mistake. But secrets rot foundations. Less than a year into their marriage, she caught him cheating again. This time with a coworker. She filed for divorce, and during the proceedings, the old scandal with Ryan resurfaced. The court documents ended up public. Suddenly, the entire extended family was dragged back into the shame, and Tyler lost not just his wife but also his job when his employer connected the dots. Another fallout. Another life crumbling in the aftershocks of Ryan's betrayal. Frankie, the grinder fling, didn't fare much better. Last I heard, he tried to rebuild after losing his clearance and job, but once the debt collectors had him, he never recovered. Bankruptcy, eviction, constant job hopping. The last update I got was a mugshot someone sent me. DUI, second offense. The arrogance was gone from his face, replaced with the look of a man who knew his own future had evaporated. And then Tomas, the sex offender I helped put away, was released again after a short stint. But this time the community had teeth. The church installed warning flyers on every entrance. Neighbors started a watch group. He couldn't go anywhere without eyes on him. He tried moving to another state, but his record followed, and someone leaked the footage I had dug up to a local Facebook group. Within months, he was arrested again, this time on charges even worse than before. When I heard he'd likely spend the rest of his life behind bars, I didn't feel guilt. I felt relief. That one wasn't revenge, it was justice overdue. But the real twist came later. About 3 years after leaving, I went back to visit family in my old city. I had avoided it like the plague, terrified of running into ghosts. But life moves on, and I wanted closure. One night, out with an old friend, we drove past the homeless encampment by the river. My friend slowed down, pointed and said, "That's Ryan." I looked, and there he was, thin, unshaven, hunched over a cart, digging through a trash bin. The man I had once loved, once imagined as my husband, once built my future around. My chest tightened. Not out of love, not out of longing, but out of shock. I couldn't reconcile that broken figure with the polished liar I had known. My friend asked if I wanted to stop, if I wanted to confront him. I said no. What was there left to say? He had already been confronted with consequences more brutal than anything words could deliver. But fate wasn't done with me. A week later, Ryan found out I was in town. I don't know how, maybe a relative mentioned it, maybe he overheard. But suddenly, I got a message on Facebook from an unknown account. It was him, begging, pleading, "Just talk to me, please. You don't understand what you've done to me. You ruined my life. You took everything from me." I stared at it for hours. The old me wanted to type back, to scream, to remind him that he had ruined me first, that his choices had started this war. But then I realized, silence was the final revenge. I blocked the account. I let him scream into the void, unheard. Because the truth was simple. He had destroyed himself. I only accelerated the collapse. Years later, I still think about that night by the river. I think about how revenge doesn't just end, it echoes. It shapes people, it follows them. And I think about how lucky I am that I got away, that I built something new instead of living in the ruins. Ryan is still there, somewhere, surviving but not living. Tyler is divorced, Frankie is broke, Tomas is in prison. And me? I'm alive. I'm happy. I won. People ask me if I regret going nuclear. Sometimes late at night I wonder. But then I remember his face that day I caught him, the casual cruelty of each confession, the way he laughed about lying to me for years. And the answer is always the same. No, I don't regret it, because betrayal that deep doesn't deserve mercy. So what you think? What would you have done in their place? Like and subscribe for more crazy stories like this one.